Are you exposing your money to the wrong kind of risk without even realizing it? Welcome to Mouthy Money. Everywhere you look online, people are talking about the power of investing. Even the government has just launched a Squirrel-based awareness campaign to encourage more people to invest. But what happens when you skip the first step? A really interesting new report from Leeds Building Society which reveals a huge blind spot in how we're managing our long-term money plans. Get this, more than 1 in 5 of us think investments are the right place to keep an emergency fund, while a similar number are relying entirely on cash savings for their long-term goals. What does that mean? It means nearly a quarter of us are either leaving our rainy day funds exposed to sudden stock market drops or letting inflation quietly eat away at our future wealth. To help us fix this mismatch, I am joined today by Catherine Wray, who is Head of Saving at Leeds Building Society. We're going to be looking at the critical importance of building a rock-solid savings buffer before you even think about investing. If you want to protect your money today so it can grow tomorrow, you don't want to miss out on that. Let's get started. Mouthy Money is proud to partner with Coinbase. If you're thinking about getting into crypto, but not sure where to start, consider Coinbase. In just a few taps, you could buy, sell, and hold Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a range of other popular crypto assets, all from right here in the UK. Coinbase is registered with the FCA in the UK, and with world-class security, you can invest with confidence. Whether you're brand new or already building your portfolio, Coinbase gives you simple tools for crypto investing. Join millions already using Coinbase. Download the app today and start your crypto journey. Find out more in the summary. Remember, don't invest unless you're prepared to lose all the money you invest. This is a high-risk investment and you should not expect to be protected if something goes wrong. This is not investment advice and it is not a recommendation to buy or sell any particular digital asset. Catherine, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
I am also joined by MRM Communications Head of Consumer Finance, Chris Tuite. Chris, hello as well. How are you doing?
Hi, Ed. All good, thanks. All good.
Now, we're going to get really stuck into this topic about rainy day funds today. We're going to be looking at why there's a mismatch, what we can do about it, some of the kind of right levels to set our short-term savings buffers at versus when it's right to start investing for the long term. To kick off though, Catherine, just tell us a bit about yourself and your background, what brought you here today.
Hi, yes. I've got 25 years of experience with retail and financial services. And here today because we know the government's ambitions. We know that the idea is to turn the UK into a nation of investors. And we knew that there was going to be a lot of high profile campaigns backed with a lot of funding, just telling everyone how good investments are and really trying to persuade individuals to invest. And we just wanted to check in on that. We wanted to check in on attitude, and we wanted to make sure that there is an awareness of how important cash savings are. So Leeds Building Society worked with the London Institute of Banking and Finance to pull a paper together with lots of the detail that you've already quoted, but it really is quite interesting.
Yeah, and I think those stats were really stark, weren't they? Where more than 1 in 5 of us are investing cash which should really be set aside for short-term needs. And then another 1 in 5 of us are simply not investing in the right way for the long term and just building up basically far too much cash. Now that mismatch, what do you think's going on there? Is there there's obviously kind of two groups there. There's people who perhaps are not taking enough risk and people who are taking too much. What do you think's at play here?
So I think there is definitely an opportunity for investment, and I am not here to say everyone should just be savings. No one should be investing. I think that the right balance has to be found for the right person. But I do also think that many individuals just don't really know much about investing. Now, I know your podcast, your listeners probably have a much more heightened awareness of it, but a lot of the people that were interviewed as part of the research, they were confusing what savings were for, what investments were for. They weren't really sure. There's been a lot of talk about the investment gains, and that's real historically. But there's also been talk recently from senior figures in the Bank of England about how corrections might be coming in the stock market. And we can see that individuals that we speak to in our branches as well are frightened. They're scared to invest. I think about 68% of respondents said the fear of losing money was putting them off investing. But as you quoted earlier, we do know that there are a number of people that are sitting on high levels of cash. And I think you mentioned it in one of your previous sessions about the cash trap. I would probably say that actually cash is really important, and it isn't just inert capital. You need to look at it with a broader lens. Yes, it protects against shocks. It covers needs. It covers if you need a new boiler, school trips. In my case, driving lessons. You do need to have enough cash on hand to access for that. It's also useful when you're getting older, if you're de-risking, but also there's peace of mind with cash. And that in itself can be a return on investment that I think we do have to think about. So I think we need to educate rather than persuade people when they've got lots of cash. I think people's risk tolerance, they need to learn a bit more, make sure that they're really understanding what's happening. And some of the research actually showed this stark gap between confidence and competence. So 3 simple-ish questions were asked, and less than a third of people got them right. One was about inflation. One was about whether it was a good idea to just buy shares in a single company or whether to have a diversified fund. People answered those incorrectly. Yet those same people then declared themselves really competent when it comes to making financial decisions.
So I think this raises as we mentioned earlier, the government has obviously launched this new awareness campaign, which involves what it calls the savvy squirrel to try and promote investing as a long-term benefit, something that people can do. But that point around, I think one of the big criticisms has been that it's very much a surface level campaign. There's not a lot of depth to it to help educate people about the right ways to approach it. So I'm going to turn to a person who is famous for his big rainy day fund on this podcast.
Is that what I'm famous for? Wow. Is that my 15 minutes? My big rainy day fund.
This is your big thing, Chris. You have admitted it, and we've talked about this a few times on the podcast now, you have quite a big rainy day fund.
Yes, I do. It's getting smaller slightly because
okay.
I've been persuaded to spend money on summer holidays and things like that. My rainy day fund is an extension of my deep, dark psychology, Ed. I think, as I think I've said before on this many times, there was a lot more financial insecurity when I was growing up. So I don't want that for my family. Lucky to have a good job. I've got a mortgage and was able previously to divide up my money between long-term, medium-term and short-term. So I was happy with that kind of balance and kept putting maybe a bit too much in the short-term bucket. But as I had a conversation with Tanya over the weekend and she's always been slightly challenging of that around how big that buffer is and why it needs to be so big. And surely we could be doing this X, Y and Z with the money, which broadly speaking, I thought in that context, she was correct. However, what's been happening in the last few weeks has changed my mind on that. It's actually, I think, somewhere in my psyche, which is slightly pessimistic about global geopolitical events at the moment, I've been thinking I need to prepare for not just one shock, not just 2 shocks, but several shocks. And I think we covered it in our last pod about this era of perma-crisis. Now I've gone complete 360 on that. I think actually having that money there ready to respond quickly to anything that might change in the short term, any other shocks that come down the line, which have become the norm since COVID, really. One comes along every few months, it seems. Then I'm glad it's there and it's given me additional peace of mind. Now, I'm going to work incredibly hard to make sure I don't dip into that. But the fact that it is there means that I can sleep easy with that. The only issue is that it's probably had a slightly negative impact on my long-term planning because I've had to, in order to make those ends meet and make sure we're not dipping into that rainy day fund, I've slightly reduced what I'm doing on the long-term front with my children's JISAs and my pensions. So not a huge amount, but just enough. Comfort now may come at a cost later when 70-year-old me is thinking, actually, you could have saved a bit more and taken a bit more risk there. So it's always an endless balancing act. But that short, medium, long-term thing is important. And I'm only willing to invest if it's over a medium term, which for me is round about 3 to 5 years. And I'm thinking I may need this money sooner than that. And therefore, I can't be subject to the whims of stock market moves on this rainy day fund. And as Catherine rightly points out, there's a lot of building speculation about where the valuation of stock markets are. Now, they may shrug that off, and I'm getting some good exposure with that with some of the other things I'm doing. But for now, I think there's a big red line drawn around that cash savings buffer, and it's trying to keep me making sure I sleep slightly better at night.
Now, anybody who's following along at this point, we'd love to hear from you what you're doing around this, whether you have a cash savings buffer, whether you're trying to build it at the moment, whether you are more focused on the investing aspect of it and why you might prefer to have less cash savings. I know from my perspective, I've probably got a bit less than you, Chris, and actually I was fortunate enough to build up a bit more savings recently and actually pay off some of the credit cards. And the thing in my mind about having cash savings buffer is actually it's that emergency thing that Catherine mentioned a little bit earlier. It's when your boiler goes and not having to resort to a credit card to bridge that gap, because it can be pernicious to have to take on credit. And that's the kind of fundamental reason why having cash savings there as your base is so important. Now, when it comes to building that, because look, it's hard to build up. I found it hard. And actually we're spending a little bit of it now because my wife Ellen she's on maternity leave. So we're having to use a bit of that to make up her loss of income on maternity leave. And that's a good way of actually just using that cash buffer. So that's fine. But when it comes to building it, it's not easy. Catherine, do you have any thoughts on things we can do to really work to build that buffer? Kind of any rules of thumb that people need to have in mind when they're thinking about what level to try and get to? Because it's very hard to judge, isn't it, what's right for an individual?
It is. And different people will have different ideas of what they're comfortable with holding. So I think one rule of thumb that's bandied around is attempting to have 3 to 6 months cover. And I think people's situations are different, but trying to save something each month is also helpful, because especially at the moment, I don't know if you've done a supermarket shop lately, but you get to the till and you're like, how much? Everything does seem to be costing more. We know we're probably expecting some inflationary effects to hit towards the end of the year. Just trying to save little and often is a good start. But probably before you even get to that stage, you want to think about any debt, not any debt, but expensive debt. So you probably want to try and phase into some of that, but then start saving. If it's small amounts, you can get some really good rates on regular savers. So that's where you want to just put a little something away each month. It's usually capped, which is why you're getting the good interest rate. So you're not able to put thousands of pounds away each month, but that's a really good place to start as well. And before you know it, actually, by the end of the year or by Christmas or something like that, you have actually managed to save up a bit. Shouldn't really have said Christmas because you're not meant to be spending it. It's helping for that buffer and that peace of mind.
Yeah. That's such an interesting point, isn't it? Because we can talk about the benefits of that cash buffer, and that's great. But actually, that cash still needs to be doing something to stay, to at least attempt to stay ahead of inflation. And that means not just languishing in, say, a lot of people will have a current account and they might get kind of a savings account set up alongside that with their bank. Those accounts aren't necessarily going to provide the best rates, are they? Chris, are you good with your savings rates?
Joe, we're reaching the point now where I need to look for a new home for it. So I have to say, years ago, when I was saving for my first flat, I was terrible. I stuck it in a cash saver with my bank, which was terrible, but rates were low generally there anyway. And it was just convenient for me. It meant that I got into a savings discipline easily. So just move this money when I get paid, and I'd rather just throw it in there and forget about it, and had a lot more disposable income. With that buffer that we're talking about there, about 2 years ago, I had a real shop around to find the best rate, but that has now not kept pace. So it's now another weekend job for me to do, which is I need to find a new home for this cash savings and move everything around, which is not as straightforward as it seems with some providers. So it's a little bit painful, but it's worth it because we're at the stage now where the savings that I'm making can throw off quite a fair bit of interest, not insignificant amounts when you get to the end of the year. And also with inflation moving, I just need to keep one eye on it. Because like you said, there's nothing more demoralizing than throwing that money away and not keeping pace with inflation. And actually what you're doing is you're losing your purchasing power over time. So you are losing money. To your point, Catherine, people are afraid of losing money, but actually I think you're losing money anyway if you don't keep pace with inflation. So it's crucial that you keep doing that. And I'm aware of it. It's a little bit of a slightly painful job. So to make some time there to do it one weekend, but that is definitely on the horizon in the next few weeks. What about you? Yeah, so we've got our kind of cash buffer now, and that actually sits in easy access because I'm a little bit risk averse to putting something in a 1 year bond or something like that, which will offer probably more competitive rates and easy access, but I prefer having that kind of access. And then what I do, which is what Catherine mentioned, is I actually have one of those regular savers, which there's a limit on how much you can put in each month, maybe £200-300, but actually the interest rates you can get kind of like 7% on those. And that's a really good way to just do a slow, steady little bit of building up over time. So how do you feel about saving, Ed?
I feel pretty good about it. And I've tried to gamify it for myself a little bit. And as I said, with that kind of easy access, I really like the regular saver aspect of those kind of accounts because it feels like you're getting a little bit of reward by, I filled my monthly amount this month for that regular saver, and that's a good feeling. And I know, and actually you see the interest, especially with the account that I've got, you see the interest tick up monthly on that one. It feels rewarding getting that. It's a good feeling. I think there's that emotional aspect is something that could be quite tricky when you then move towards investing, because with investing, it doesn't just go up, it also goes down, and that can be quite daunting. So Catherine, how do we strike that balance between, obviously, some people will be trying to save cash, but also will want to invest for the long term. What's a good way to strike that balance so that we're not feeling under pressure to do both or failing to do either as a result?
I think build up that buffer first would be my suggestion. And yes, utilise regular savings accounts. There are also cash savings accounts that are fixed. You tend, at the moment anyway, you tend to get a better rate with fixed. And I think it's worth remembering that with a cash ISA, you can fix it. But if you did actually need access to your money, you could get access to it, usually with a penalty, but with an ISA, you can access it. If you get a cash bond, then you can't. You're limited with that. So I'd probably say use the regular savers. They're limited to smaller balances. For some larger balances, think of using fixed products, ISAs. Be aware that next April, the cash ISA limit is reducing if you're under 65. So your cash ISA limit would then be £12,000. Total ISA limit still £20,000, but just 12 in cash. And then when you've got to the stage where you've got this buffer, you've got this 3 to 6 months, you've got some guaranteed returns. Yes, inflation could be eroding that, but you've also got the FSCS, so the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, that would cover that money in event of a bank collapse. So you're feeling pretty safe, you're comfortable with that. And it all depends on the person. I'm probably a bit more risk averse than some of your listeners, but then you can start to invest. And obviously you can start to invest alongside that as well. But I'd just say make sure that you're comfortable with that buffer. And when you are investing, I mean, you've already mentioned this yourself, don't panic. Don't panic if it's going up or down. If you're in it for the long term, 5 years, or Chris, you mentioned 3 to 5 years, then just don't let the ups and downs put you off. In the long term, you're likely to see stronger returns than you are with savings, but make sure you make the most of where you've got that buffer and keep checking in on it, because another sort of trap that people can make is they get a really high paying rate. It's brilliant, but might only be there for a year. So you do need to set yourself a reminder in your calendar to just check back in on those rates. If it's easy access, obviously you can switch it around whenever you want. Keep an eye on the best buys. You've got to be quite active with it. Say if you're very passive with your savings, you're likely to be on a lower rate compared to some of them that are out.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking that kind of proactive approach is so important. And I think with the long-term investing aspect as well, once you've got that buffer in place, it's really important to have in your mind, what are your long-term goals with that investing as well? Because it's not just investing for the sake of it. We want to have in mind, what do I want to get out of this? Because you've got your pension, and that's there for you, for your kind of workplace savings to go into for the long term and for retirement. Are you considering something like maybe a house deposit that is probably, if you're investing for a house deposit, it needs to be over 5 years, but other long-term goals as well. And those are all perfectly admirable. I think you just have to have it set in your mind, don't you? What do I want out of this in the long term? And what should my plan be for that money? And that's so important for defining our goal, defining our actions based on our goals, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Brilliant. I think that more or less wraps us up here. I think my big takeaway from it is that proactive savings point is to stay on top of it, make sure you're doing the right things, and make sure you're having those goals in mind. I'm really keen to hear from everybody. What level are you setting your cash savings at? Are you like Chris, where it's the more the safer you feel, or are you pushing it out a little bit more? Or any instances where you've had to use your cash savings, like I have with my wife Ellen, we've had to use a little bit for kind of maternity leave to make up our incomes. It's totally normal. With that, I should say thank you, Chris, as ever, for your personal insights.
My pleasure.
And Catherine, thank you so much for joining us today. Brilliant. With that, I shall say thank you to everybody for following along. We shall see you all again very soon. So thank you and goodbye.